Now, please forgive me if I get this tribe wrong, but Jack is Muthi Muthi.
Muthi Muthi, yeah.
Oh, look, done all right. Muthi Muthi man. He's worked as Indigenous health worker and has been the Chief Executive Officer at Mibbinbah Spirit Healing since 2009. Jack has extensive hands-on experience in social and emotional well-being for Indigenous males through to the development of culturally appropriate traditional and therapeutic programs, extremely important. He's published research in the area and been involved in many research programs, and has been project management, and also has project management skills, including partnership development. Jack is in high demand as a facilitator and speaker, hence why you're here with us, and has a Bachelor of Health Science degree in health promotion, and established Mibbinbah, a health promotion charity for Indigenous males that focus on building safe spaces for Aboriginal males. Jack is one of the co-creators of the Mad Bastards Guide, Be the Best You Can Be, which is now the Mibbinbah Be the Best You Can Be program. Thanks for joining us, Jack.
No worries. Thank you.
And Damien is the chair of DIMS, Darwin Indigenous Men's Service, which offers culturally informed services to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across the Darwin regions. Programs include Indigenous family violence and prevention, Indigenous men's healing, and strong communities. Did we do that all right? We got through that?
Yeah, no, that's great. Great.
It's always an awkward thing, having your bio read out. Like you kind of, you sit there going, oh, this just feels wrong. But I am, in all honesty, after looking into what you guys do, I don't think any of those bios do you justice at all, in any way, shape or form. Jack, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story as to, what got you into what you're doing, and a bit of history of where you're at and why you're here?
Yeah, sure. As you said before, brother, I'm a Muthi Muthi man, South Western New South Wales. Spent a lot of time in Melbourne, grew up in Melbourne, in between Melbourne and a little place called Brungle Creek in New South Wales. Had a pretty rough childhood, I suppose. So a lot of domestic violence and that sort of stuff, and was sexually abused as a young kid. So to take that away, I suppose I ran amok for a good few years when I was a young fella. But I think footy and cricket was my way out of things. So I played a lot of footy, played a lot of cricket, and then when I retired, I thought, shit, what am I going to do now? So I did have a trade, and it was a plasterer, but I never wanted to actually do that. So I thought, what can I do here? And I thought, I'll go to TAFE, and I did a remedial massage course. I thought that might keep me a bit of an interest, with in the sport wise, and so I did that, and then I got talked into going to uni the next year, and I did. I started in the Bachelor of Health Science, and went on to do physio, and didn't like physio, so I come back and finished off with Bachelor of Health Science, health promotion, and then ended up in on the Gold Coast in Queensland in 2005, working as an Indigenous health worker, and it was there that I sort of seen how many gaps there were for our lads, and we set up a men's group, but we didn't have anywhere to meet. So we used to meet in a park, or meet, next to the beach on the park. And as soon as we had 15, 20 fellas around, who would come? The coppers would come. So it was a week in, week out thing. The coppers would come, we'd set up, and that's what happened. So I was talking to a lecturer of mine from Latrobe, and he had a lot to do with the non-Indigenous men's shed movement down in, particularly in Victoria. So I said to him, look, there's nothing here for our fellas, there's nothing at all. And we got to having a bit of a yarn, and we went back and forth. And in 2006, we were invited to, it was then the Cooperative Research Centre for Aboriginal Health, we did a presentation around our men's stuff and how vitally desperate it was for our fellas to be able to have a safe space. And we were lucky enough to, we had a lot of elders in the audience and female elders as well. And that, there was a lot of tears that day, and something must have went right for us, because we were actually, we were given some money to write up a proposal about safe spaces for our fellas and how a well-facilitated space might be able to help our lads talk about their concerns and issues. So it was a research program. It lasted 3 years, and then we were lucky enough to be turned into a health promotion charity. So in 2009, that's what we've become. And Mibbin means men or eagle, and Bar means place in the Mibbinbah language of southeastern Queensland. So there it started as, I suppose, men's place. And wherever we went, like we did have 11 employees at one stage around the eastern seaboard of Australia. Our lads, we would partner with local organisations and make it into a full-time position. So, and they were our research project officers. So we did that. And then in 2009, as I said, we got turned into a health promotion charity. So as we stand today, and then we were lucky enough to be involved with the movie Mad Bastards. I don't know if you fellas have seen it, but it's about a lad who goes to find his son in the Kimberleys, and he's from Perth. He's an Noongar man. And I was lucky enough to be involved. There was 10 of us that created a program that runs with the movie. The movie is an icebreaker, and then we look at themes from the movie, such as identity, relationships, taking responsibility, and these sort of things. So since 2012, Mibbinbah, because we've got the rights to the program, we've been running that around Australia since 2011, 12. In 2014, because whenever we went into our communities, our male elders would say to us, can you also work with the women? So then we thought, yeah, well, geez, it's not just about our fellas, is it? It's about us all working together and being able to create something of a future for our kids and our grandkids and those sort of things. So now we've got a few females trained up as facilitators, and we go in and, we've been probably everywhere. I mean, we should have been in Alice Springs now, working in 4 communities. And then after that in the Kimberleys, but because of COVID-19, it just hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure we'll get back there. So look, I think I was in the right place at the right time. I think I've got, a lot of empathy for, for fellas that have been through, and girls, of course, as well, that have been through, like that domestic violence and the sexual abuse. And also, look, I had a bout of depression back in 2008 as well. So we did a lot of work with Beyond Blue. I was one of their Indigenous ambassadors there for a while. So I think that the good thing about having been through depression, I think it shows you what others are going through, and you're able to feel that, have that empathy and feel that for them as well. So I say, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, but that's a positive, because we like to talk about celebrating what we do well, rather than, of course we remember our traumas and all that sort of stuff, but we need to be celebrating what we're doing well. And everyone is doing something well. We just need to be able to say, geez, I'm doing all right, or brother, you're doing okay, instead of knocking each other and doing it that way. So we also run an annual camp, which we haven't had one for a little while, but we've had 10 annual camps since 2007, where we get over 100 lads from all over Australia come and talk about their concerns and issues, and, do health-related sessions. And there's also our cultural stuff as well, like bush tucker, boomerang throwing and making, and all these sort of things as well. And we also run some different workshops in communities, and not just with community, but with staff as well of different AMSs. And we do a lot around, like relationships. We do a lot around grief. We do a lot around anger. So we do a hell of a lot around anger, actually. So, grief and hope and healing as well. So that's one of our big ones: inspiration, hope, and healing. So, so that's a little bit about what we do. And we're going better than ever. And we did a train the trainer over in the Kimberleys last year for our program, Be the Best You Can Be. So, and we're back off there as soon as the borders open up again. We'll be back over there to deliver some more sessions on that as well. So, and thanks for having me as well.
My pleasure. I figure you just do a little bit of stuff after that.
Yeah. I didn't know which to put in, brother. So yeah.
No, and again, that's why we invited both of you guys on, because your knowledge and your experience and just hearing from you is what we want to do. So thank you so much for sharing and especially with so much knowledge there. And how about you, brother Damien? What brings you here? What got you into the health space and the work that you're doing now?
So I guess a bit about my journey. I've been working in social and community services since I turned about 19. So I'm 31 now, old fella. I'm starting to get the grey hairs and everything. But and I've spent a few years working in remote communities as well. So 5 years in many of the remote communities across the Northern Territory. I've probably been to every community across the top end of Northern Territory, and just learning from those experiences has given me sort of the insight to push many of the initiatives that I serve today. So like linking in with the Darwin Indigenous Men's Service, I'm currently sit as the Territory Lead for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander initiatives as well.
Yep.
So managing and I think we're going to be talking about that a bit later as well in terms of the cultural context and applying that in more of a social and systematic overview, and how we can really change and embed cultural practices within an organisation, such as within child protection, disability and aged care, and any other service that we're doing as well. So we're really looking at that as well in terms of the Darwin Indigenous Men's Service, is what that looks like. How do we work alongside government to really look at some of their strategic framework and oversight, but really be unique in how we present what we want to do internally to the people that we partner with, the men that we partner with across and it's across the territory as well, because we're not only having men that are based in Darwin, we're having men that are also very connected to some of the remote communities across the Northern Territory as well. But yeah, so I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I guess from my journey as well, growing up, there was negative situations where I was in those situations growing up, in terms of domestic violence and so forth. So I want to be, I guess, a different view, especially myself as a father now, with my son. He's 12, 13. I want to show, I guess, and be present within his journey, because I didn't have that as well. Someone who was present throughout my journey. My closest father figure was my granddad, but he passed away when I was about 14, 15. So seeking that sort of support, and hopefully I can be that support and network for him. Beside me as well, I've got a young fella here, Sebastian Pager. I wanted to connect in as well, because I'm linking into creating a mentoring program as well.
Yeah.
So I've done this outside and externally under my own ABN. So I'm calling it IBC Community Services. So the focus is towards peer support mentoring to strengthen the foundations of our identity, belonging and connection through peer support networking. So I've established some strong networks across Darwin Region, and hosting a campfire and recreating a campfire experience, and having a yarning circles and really talking about some of the generational challenges we have, and sharing some insights towards how to co-regulate and self-regulate some of those situations that we do have over time. And growing up in Darwin, I've been through some of those situations. So hopefully that peer support, mentoring and network, we can guide and support our future leaders as well.
everything you're saying just resonates with me massively, and you know, particularly the campfire project you're talking about, and for me, again, this is why the AMHF and why I'm so passionate about it, starting these conversations with men all around the country. And so it's so important that we sit on country and have these convos, but how do we also expand them out? And so we're having them on a national level with one another, and which is a huge thing. I'm just going to ask you a bit of a follow-up question, Damien, if that's all right, and then I'll go back. I feel like we've got like experience and like people finding their feet here, like or find, like, I know, like me, I'm 35, and I feel like I've just found what I want to say. You're like, almost like I've found what I feel like. I've listened to our history and our elders in the space, and people like, you know, Uncle Mick Adams, and I see we've got Steve on from Darwin as well, and people like Jason and all these wonderful people. Glenn, he put his hand up there, so I needed to acknowledge him as well. That's not why he's putting his hand up, but I'm just stirring him. But I feel like I've listened to a lot of our elders now, and the men that have kind of planted the importance of health into me, and who have inspired me. And I feel like I'm finding something to say and want to build on their conversation. Do you feel like you're at a similar point in where you're at with your professional journey? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, as you said, like, I'm finding my voice now, and I guess my positioning within my community. So there was times where I didn't feel I had the confidence to be at the table with our men that are much like our elders and so forth. And there was times where I would just sit at the back and just listen and learn and so forth. But I think it's been very inviting, and the guys that I work with now, such as Steve and Jason, and now the other board members, and I'm not sure if any other ones are on, but they've been great in terms of that support and giving me that sort of foundational support to let me, I guess, to share my vision and insight towards that. As myself and another fellow, we're probably the youngest in terms of the current structure of the board, but they've really taken that sort of approach and really supported us and guided us and offered us that foundation to do that, which has been great. And I think it's really great to see that we can maybe do that as well in terms of our future leaders. That's why I wanted to bring Sabin in the conversations and just to listen in as well, in terms of seeing what's out there and what's. Sometimes we get caught up in the bubble of where we are in our own communities, but we got to really look towards the foresight of what we want to achieve and what's currently happening out there across Australia and even the world.
Yeah, I'm so with you there, and brother, if you want to come forward at the back there, feel free to come sit a bit closer, bro. He's right, he shanked him up.
Yeah. No, he's just listening in.
Okay. Jack, in regards to the space that you've kind of forged, do you feel there's a new conversation that needs to be had, or do you feel we still need to sit? And I'm sorry, I'm diversing from the questions. I will get back to them, but this just kind of popped up to me. Is there a newer conversation emerging from what you've seen over the years, or are we still kind of wrestling with our current conversation?
I mean, it's sort of, look, we do a fair bit of speaking around the country, and it sort of annoys me that, you know, people will get up and say that our fellas won't talk and won't talk about, you know, their concerns and issues. But I can guarantee you, look, it's probably changed a little bit over the last 15 or so years, but I can guarantee you that if our lads are in a well-facilitated, safe space, they will talk about their concerns and issues. But not only their concerns and issues, they've got the answers they've got the solutions to what their concerns and issues are. So that's the thing that people, you know, like, and it's probably outside of this group, that need to understand is that they do know what's wrong and they do know what the problem is. But what they need is that helping hand, that guidance, that mentoring to get to the solution. And I think that's where people miss the point. You know, there's still a lot of that top-down approach that come in and say, this is what's wrong with you fellas and girls, and this is how we're going to fix it. That doesn't work with our communities. I mean, it's got to be that bottom-up approach where, you know, what are the concerns and issues in your communities, and how do we go about fixing those? Because we can do it together. I hope that answered the question.
100%. And like, as I said, I feel like there's just so many great people coming into this space, and I'm just so new. And one thing I really am remiss on is I hadn't always been good at maintaining relationships in this space, which is what I'm trying to rectify now, is build new relationships and listen and learn, but also maintain those relationships so there's an ongoing conversation. And the fact that, like, we're hearing yourself kind of say, no, we need to work together, and we have the answers, and we need to actually forge our path forward is really heartwarming for me, and something that I'm trying to really forge.
Absolutely, Stu. I mean, the thing is, look at the great fellas you've got online there. You know, like Damien. Look at the job he's doing up there. Steve Torres is there, I think. You know, Jason Bonson. They're all there. You know, like and you know, Philip and whoever else is there. I can't see who else is there, but there's so much knowledge and so much wisdom there. And if we can work together on that, and it's not about stealing anyone else's work or anything like that, but it's about us progressing together, and it's for our future generations. So if we don't want to think about ourselves, let's talk about our kids. Let's talk about our grandkids. You know, I know I think Damien or someone mentioned Uncle Mick before. Uncle Mick's like the guru, you know, like we all go to Uncle Mick, but we've got to have other lads there to be able to help Uncle Mick, because, you know, like he's not a young fellow anymore, and I hope he's not on, so he hears me saying that. But, I've done a lot of work with Uncle Mick, and, you know, like I'm doing my master's at the moment, and he's one of my supervisors. So, you know, like the work that he's done, the work that Mark Wennertong's done, the work that, you know, Frank Spry's done, and fellas like this, they're the ones that, you know, started that movement about creating that safe space for our lads to be able to talk and talk about their issues. And that's what it comes to, you know. It's about knowing concerns and issues, but it also knows about solutions. So it's about us being able to stand side by side with each other and move it forward. Sometimes we go sideways, as long as we don't go backwards. So.
Yeah, I'm so with you, and I think some key words you said there for me is one, movement. You know, how do we band everyone together and create this movement of Aboriginal men's health and all that it entails, you know, around mental, physical, spiritual well-being, cultural well-being, all these things. But how do we forge this movement together where everybody's space, it's not just one person's space? And like, I've been so conscious the last couple of days that I really needed to reach out to some of those men a lot earlier to get those forefathers on board, because they're so pertinent to our conversation. And I just, whoever could join, I'm just so thankful for it. How do we forge these conversations to be ongoing, to be consistent, but also a unified voice, but understanding we're going to have difference of opinion, we're going to have those different views, but how do we sit? And like, something that sits with me is a point from my elders used to make, is that we would sit on country until there was not so a majority were happy, also there was a consensus reached where we all were happy and we all moved forward together as one. And it's something that sits with me a great deal, is how do we do that? And I'd love for people to be part of that ongoing conversation, and whether I've got to walk to Darwin or you know, to where have you, you know, whatever I need to do, I'm really open to being part of that conversation. Don't particularly want to walk to Darwin, but with
you can have that, brother.
Yeah. But I guess, yeah, some conversation around that happens. Glenn, did you have something you want to jump in and kind of ask or guide this convo a little bit with as well?
If I can add a little something, I'd love to. I mean, mostly just to hear, really. And Steve, I want to say hi. Been
Joe
too,
Glenn, how are you, mate?
I'm good.
Hey,
It's great to
good
see
see
you. It's been a year since I was up in
There he is.
Darwin.
Glenn's the only guy I know that knows
I'm missing.
Unfortunately, you're breaking up, Steve. I think what you're saying is I'm a legend.
I actually think what he's saying is that Glenn's the only fella who would catch a fish and then not eat it at the end of it.
I did. I somehow.
Steve wouldn't have minded that though. He would have ate it.
Steve took me fishing up in Darwin, and I managed. I don't know. Still don't know how I did it, but I caught a big queen. I was the only one of the three of us who caught a big queenfish, and I'm a. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, Steve's audio is not very good there, unfortunately. But it'd be good to hear from him if he's able to contribute. But also, you know, if others are in the background as well, you know, people like Jason Bonson. The question for me, and I think that point you were making, Jack, about you know, bottom up, not top down, is, and I'm just talking about. Obviously, I'm talking from a all men's health perspective here, but there are so many overlaps. I'm seeing, you know, exactly the same thing in just sort of general men's mental health. I do a lot of, you know, conversations at that strategy, policy, funding level where we need to get more of a voice for men in general and for Aboriginal men in particular. Because if the voice isn't at those top tables, then men's stuff will get overlooked. You know, there won't be the funding put in place or the programs put in place that we can jump off. But then if those programs are only ever delivered top down, you know, I spend a lot of time in suicide prevention, and if all we do is put, you know, large amounts of money into the Beyond Blues and the Lifelines, all of which do important work, it's never going to reach the people who need it most. And the people who need it most are often best served by people doing it from the bottom up. But in my experience, but the trouble with the stuff at the bottom is it's much harder to see than the stuff at the top. And so then our interesting challenges, and maybe one of the reasons why I wanted to bring in Steve as well, is how do we make sure that, because the challenge with bottom up work is that it has to be led by lots of different people.
Absolutely.
And the reason governments love top down is because you can give all the money to one organization and then just wipe your hands and walk away. But bottom up work takes a lot longer and is a lot harder and often involves a lot of reinventing the wheel. And I know Steve's been involved in a lot of sort of connecting with different organizations around the country doing family violence work. I'm sure you other guys do as well. So the nudge I want to give to the conversation is, how do we get that bottom-up work happening all over the place, but make sure that we're seen and heard at the top so that we actually get the support from the top or from the system or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, just I think tapping into our existing local network. So wherever you are locally, just strengthen those networks, whether it's in greater sort of Darwin area and within the territory.
Dave, I was just going to say, maybe turn your camera off. Not because you're beautiful, but if you turn your camera off, we might hear your voice better.
Hello, hear me now?
Yeah, maybe I was saying, maybe can you turn your camera off?
Oh yeah, can you hear better?
Yeah.
Much better. Okay, so I think, you know, all the answers are already there. That as Jack alluded to before, we just need to tap into basically and strengthen our local networks that are already existing, and just grow them, because and you strengthen the communication between members of local networks, you know, within towns and then a region, then within the state. And then nationally, you can link up across, you know, state by state. You know, you could have facilitators or coordinators of each network, locally, then state, and nationally, and they link up. So one person could, he wanted to get a message to everyone nationally and to join or get support for a particular, as Stewie was saying, you know, some sort of movement for change or support, you know, the case for more resources in Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander men's programs, then, you know, it's, if we act alone, then we're not as strong. But if we act as one,
Absolutely,
we're much stronger. So that one of the things that we're developing now through this men's violence prevention framework, which we're getting to the end stages of it. We've just about finished all the drafts for each of the documents. So we've got a men's healing framework, a policy, practice and facilitators guides. But one of the offshoots from these national knowledge circles that we had, so we had between 45 and 50 men that gathered over a period of 2 years, supported by a group of up to 15 women that had their own gathering, but they supported this movement of men that wanted to take ownership of, you know, this issue that's, you know, destroying our communities. That's, you know, family, domestic violence, and any sort of violence. So let our men solve these problems, but we've, you know, listen to us. We've got solutions, but so one of the offshoots from that has been a move to create a peak sort of body that represents you know, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men on a national level on the issue of you know, domestic violence prevention. So but whatever captures that, you know, so whatever needs there are around that. So so Jack, you've been a part of that, and a few other in the leadership group like Alan Thorpe, Brad Whitney, and others,
and Uncle Devon from over in WA. Yeah, it's sort of taken a little bit of a backseat since COVID, but we've had a couple of meetings, as you said, Steve, to try and set up, you know, four Aboriginal men's organisations coming together to try and work together to I suppose get a better go at some of the funding for domestic and family violence, and it come about because we're actually sick of non-Indigenous organisations coming in and trying to work with our fellas in a real negative way rather than in that strength-based approach, I guess. So we're trying to put that together. It's still in early days yet, but Steve and the Healing Foundation have been really, really good to us to be able to help us along the way. They've given us support in writing things up and that sort of stuff. And I just spoke to Uncle Devon last week, and he's trying to get another meeting up so we can sort of finalise what it might look like. So we've written a few things up. It's not quite at the stage where we can give it to people yet. And then what will happen then is we'll actually invite other fellas and organisations in to be able to be a part of it. So we don't want to exclude anyone, but we do want to you know, keep it to the right ethos, I guess. So yeah, so still early days, but look, it's really promising. And you know, when you got fellas like Craig Rigney from South Australia, and Alan Thorpe and from Victoria, and Uncle Devon from WA, you got to, you know, we talked about it before. You got that really good mix of wisdom and knowledge, and you know, you got the backing of, you know, like of Steve Torres and other fellas like that. You know, it can go a long way. So it's a really positive thing that we see that we're doing, and that's what you want it to be. And we want to celebrate what our lads are doing well. So yeah, so fingers crossed, and look, love to have other fellas involved as well. You know, so
yeah, that's a really significant piece of work.
Yeah, and it's hard work too.
Sure, right,
yeah.
yeah. Getting, because everyone, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like world peace and being nice to each other. It's like working together. That's everyone should do that. We should all just work together. But actually, the process of working together is really, really tough, particularly when we're not well resourced. Because
Well, I think that's the thing, Glenn. You know, like because we're not well resourced, and because everyone's so busy with their own organisations and the fellas and the girls that they're dealing with, it's something that we've got to try and fit in. But because we want it so badly, we do our best to make it fit. You know what I mean? So you know, like we've had one meeting in Adelaide, we've had one in Melbourne, and we were supposed to have one on the Gold Coast earlier this year, but because of COVID, that's been cancelled or postponed, if you like. Yeah, so they're the things we're trying to share it around so that it makes it easier for, you know, one fella, and then yeah, so just sharing around the hosting and look, I think we're on the right track because to be honest, I think, you know, there's no ego involved in this. It's about the betterment of our communities, you know. So it's something that we're all really passionate about, and we've all been doing it for a long time. So yeah. But we do want other fellas involved as well. So
yeah,
Love to be involved. Hands up. In any way, shape, or form to help, let us know.
Yeah, no worries. That's fantastic. Yeah.
And with it, well, just going to comment on that too. With an organisation like what's being proposed as a peak body, it's capturing all the issues because. And particularly, as we know, the impacts of intergenerational trauma, how that manifests in not only violence but suicide. Because if you're at risk of violence, then most likely you're at risk of, alcohol and other drug abuse, violence, and all the other issues. It's not just one issue in isolation. Then there's other health and well-being issues well going on, so social emotional well-being and poor nutrition, and it could be lots of things. So peak body like that can capture a lot of those issues and work with them. So and just things that
brother, I really do. I think that's beautiful said. So
I think sorry.
No, go on, brother. You go.
Go for it.
Like, so in terms of the peak bodies and say if it's a community or practice, I think that allows a continuum of the conversations to flow on. So it's not a rotating sort of effect when we're talking and we're relaying sort of similar conversations that we've had over a number of years. And I can tell you now up here in Darwin, our men and communities are very frustrated about being consultated about the same challenges and issues or concerns, where someone may have come into What Air, for example, and spoke about domestic violence, and then they're going to come in and talk about men's health and social and emotional well-being, which is sort of relatable in some of the context. But I think it would be good to say if there was a peak body in terms of men's health across in terms of this space and generating the flow of conversations, because then that allows flexibility outside of the government. Because when you're caught up in sort of that government framework, the initiatives and strategic frameworks are based on whoever's in power at that time, and whoever's ideas is thought to be the best interest of that individual service or program. However, if it sits outside of that, it could allow the continuum to flow and those conversations to gain momentum to support what it is that we want to support. If it's domestic violence, suicide awareness, like I think we get caught up in the cycle of different leaders coming in and out, and the conversations at times get lost because the co-design process that was initiated 2 years ago is lost in the framework or the consultations that was done in that process. However, if it's sat within a different organisation that sits out, that could be a gateway for men's health initiatives or social emotional support across Australia, then that could generate a foundation that generates some interest and control within that space.
I think exactly what you said, the control within the space, but the continuity. And when you've got then young fellas probably sitting around that are listening to the conversation, if they flow into that leadership position, they've already been there, they've listened, they've heard, they've learned. And then it also, the control aspect is it allows us to possibly dictate some of the conversation rather than new government coming in and we're being dictated to. And you're so right. It gives a larger element of control, but also continuity, which is what our mob need. As you said, like we're some of the most researched and over-consultated people in the world. Like it's constant, you know. And we've had, and that's what I was alluding to earlier, was around where's the conversation heading and how are we controlling the conversation and what do we need to do in order for that peak body, whatever comes from these combos and the conversations that you guys are already having, Jack, where's it going to head and how do we maintain it? You know, we talk about self-determination. That's it. You know, that's how we do it.
And like allowing sort of a flow-on effect to filter into some of the strategic visions or the oversight of, say, what the government want to achieve and so forth, but then allowing, say, the non-profit organisations that are working on the ground to link into those grounded solutions, because it could be a wraparound cycle, but I don't think there's that central community or practice to formalise those conversations to say, all right, so everyone who's within this particular space, let's work together to contribute, I guess, a literature review of how well we're doing within this particular space. However, it's generally a 3-month review. All right, send your paper here, send your paper here. And it doesn't really get that sort of momentum or concertative sort of approach to really inform how well this sort of grounded solution, this grounded practice is going. But yeah, I think that's my sort of insight and challenge around sort of the strategic sort of framework and working with a non-profit as well as starting my own sort of business as well is channeling and mapping all that can be quite challenging. But I think if the sort of if community of practice is the word, I think I'm referring to, well, if that was set up in a way that really integrated everything together, then the person leading that can filter the responses according to the strategic oversight of what we want to achieve.
You're so right. And we don't have to do that alone anymore. You know, the old fellas that were doing and fighting for all these peak bodies and all these organisations to start now, there can be a whole unified approach, which is massive, you know. And some of us, like for me, this is my job. I get paid to do this, you know, whereas others were doing it on the side. And, you know, so finding the people that can actually invest the time in their work hours as well as, you know, countless other hours, because that's the way community works, unfortunately. And this works is it's a passion and you have to do your own amount of input as well. But how you guys, like Glenn and I have been discussing this, so I'm like jumping out of my skin at the moment going, how awesome is these conversations that are happening already and everyone's thinking the same thing, you know? So, so yeah, and the work's already started, you know. Jack and the other men involved are already starting this work.
Well, and can I just say too, because look, it come out of something that we all seen. We worked with this one particular organisation. All of us did one workshop with them, and we seen how disrespectful they were to our people, to our men, to our women, and we thought this just isn't right. This is not right, and they're getting the big bucket loads of money.
Yeah.
Whereas we're the organisations on the ground doing the hard yards. So that's where it comes from. And I think, look, I agree with you, Damien. What you were saying before is spot on. And it's so important that we do get this right. So that's why it's probably taken a little bit longer than what we thought. But then again, because of COVID-19, that's put a big dampener on it as well. And like wherever we go, it's the same story. We're the most researched people in the world, and it's so true. So and there's so many good little projects going on in little pockets around Australia, but we don't get to hear about them because all we hear about is the negative shit that goes on in our communities. We don't get to hear those good little projects that are going on. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing, Damien, with the mentoring and that sort of stuff, because we're actually doing helping a mob in Townsville as well with a cultural mentoring project as well. So it might be really good to link up with those fellas there, and maybe we can do a cultural exchange, those sort of things.
Definitely.
So they're the things that we need to be looking at, So look, it's I think it's a fantastic initiative, like Stu and Glenn, that you've got this together and we're able to have those yarns, I haven't met Damien before, but it's such a pleasure to do it and such a pleasure to, like to be in that space and hear about what you're doing, brother. So, yeah.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
And Jack, do you think part of the problem is that typically the conference space is enabled for connection, but it hasn't enabled for ongoing connection? There hasn't been a constant dialogue that's happened afterwards. And in some spaces some people connect and they kind of go great and they build a relationship. But like for me, I'd love for these kind of series of what's going on now and to be an ongoing dialogue and conversation rather than just a meetup once every 2 years where we discuss men's health. Then everyone goes back to their own silos, they flog themselves out for another couple of years, and then they come back. Like why? I think this is enabling us to, and COVID, if there's a blessing to come out of it, is that we've learned that we can connect this way and do some work that's ongoing. Like, would you agree with that, or do you think?
Oh, look, absolutely. And I mean, what's needed is that network. For fellas to be able to, say, hey, Stu, what are you doing over there? Or, what are you doing there, Glenn? Or Damien, what are you doing there? So it's got to be that connection. Yeah, 100%. And I think what happens with these conferences as well is that they're too overpriced. Like we'd love to there's so many knowledgeable fellas in community with their wisdom and their knowledge, but how in God's name can they get there to be there to even share, to even listen to what's going on, and it's the same for some of the organisations, some of our, the smaller organisations. You can't afford to go to all these conferences, so then you miss out, and to be honest, the conference and the people at the conference, they miss out on those lads and their wisdom and their knowledge.
And that's where the real combo is happening. Like I tried to kick something off in 2015. I didn't quite understand what I was doing with what I wanted to do with men's health when we had the Central Coast Conference. And I knew I wanted something, but I was at an age, and this is why I asked Damien, because I was like, oh, now I actually understand what I wanted to do, which actually was just to get men on country sitting together from all around Australia. It's not expensive. It's how do we get men sitting around a fire? And then you've got Lomas and the guys doing camping on country stuff now. And it was like, how do we just get people to sit on country? And maybe we have to do it online. I don't know. But it's like, how can we just affordably get people together into a spot? And maybe it's the leaders in the space, or like, I'm happy to organise it. I'm happy to shut my mouth and just get people together.
Can I just jump in there? And like, I think it's important to have that connection online and that sort of stuff. And, if we need to ask a question, how's this working for you there? How might I do it here or whatever, and vice versa. But I also think it's really, really important for our fellas to be able to get together. And that's what I was saying about us with our camps that we have nationally, you know, like, and we get over 100 lads there. But it is hard to get them there at times as well. I mean, ours are nowhere near expensive as, you know, like different conferences that you do go to, but it's just about covering the costs, you know.
Well, you've got food, you've got accommodate, you've got a whole range of different things. I totally agree. I also look back and I go, Lorway, we had mass gatherings for hundreds of thousands of years. People would travel from all over country. They would get there and men would sit together and do ceremony. And I'm not talking about us going to do ceremony, but what I'm saying is there's got to be a way, and maybe the peak body's it. Maybe getting that funding or what have you for it to happen. But like for me also, I'm so passionate. Like I'll pay for this off my, you know, for me to get there any way I can, you know, and those things. And how do we facilitate that? And, you know, I just think there's so much. I'm sorry, I get really I get so passionate because I think these are the convos that need to be happening. You know,
Well, I think that's the thing as well. Like we do this day to day, and like we're like even within the Darwin Indigenous Men's Service and many men's services across Australia, these conversations aren't new. Like a co-design isn't new. Isn't a new process or self-determination or grounded solutions. Like we're talking about this stuff each day in, each day out. We're partnering and supporting our men across the stream of some very sensitive challenges as well. But then it takes an individual or an organisation to come in and do a co-design process to really structure and framework the process. But that stuff it would be great if there could be a central way of communicating sort of that information and really have a gateway for men's initiatives to support and really be flexible around the approach. So it's not really a structured, straightforward, this is it for the year, this is our strategic framework for 3 years. Like it needs to be flexible in its approach.
Fluid.
And that comes through, say, such organisations as what the guys are doing at DIMS there. Through those ongoing consultations, they're getting a lot of grounded solutions each day, but there's nowhere to channel it. So we need to have a lot of leaders involved in those particular spaces to really listen in, to engage in those conversations, to really get an understanding of what self-determination or grounded solutions actually looks like. And it can still meet their strategic oversight, but we're really providing grounded and solutions towards how we can achieve that.
I agree, and I think we've all found different aspects of that in our own organisations and how we can embed that. Would you guys be open to? I'd be happy to set up a central gateway, to use your words, and for this conversation to continue in another space, or bring it back onto this space or what have you, or would that be something that, you know, because I know, Jack, you're already doing work in this space. How best do we contribute to the space? I'm just conscious of time as well. That's all you need to do.
Again, look, I mean, and a lot of time it is about resources and what's available at the time, and we've all got those issues. But I think that, you know, like if we can all come together, we can, you know, keep having these yarns about which way is going to be the best for our lads. I mean, I see it as exciting, to be honest. You know, when you got fellas like Damien and the young fella there in the background, you know, doing this stuff, and you know, if we don't get if something like this doesn't happen, we don't get to hear about that. You know what I mean? And you know, so this is we need to be promoting it. We need to be celebrating what these lads are doing. We need to be celebrating what the lads in Townsville are doing, in Warrnambool are doing, down in Victoria. You know, so. But we don't get to hear about that. So I think this is a really good way of being able to network, support each other, and also get out what we are doing and what we're doing well, because we do it well.
I really think, like, and I think you just said the word around cultural exchange, and really inviting, I guess, others in this space in terms of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural frameworks and of why we do the things we do. It's not about of how we do it, but it's about how it makes us feel. And I think that's where people get misconfused will get confused around the process, because we're always explaining the process of going to, say, men's business or women's business or business and so forth. It's not the process of going, it's the process of how it makes us feel.
100%.
And like the spears, like we don't go and like, we're not sitting down and make the spear. It's the process of making the spear. Like, I think that's what a lot of organizations really don't understand and don't get. We're having like these conversations like at the moment to really inform what cultural informed practice looks like.
I agree. Like, my organisation at Interrelate has been on a 7-year journey of that, where we've now embedded cultural frameworks right throughout the organisation, you know, and it's been a process. And I think that's also what people need to understand, that you can't have it all right now. It's a process for people to learn and to go through, and that you need to walk that journey. 7 years ago, I thought I was ready for it. No, we need. Now I now I know why I wasn't ready for it, because it was a process that I needed to go through of growth for me personally, but for the organisation. And we know organisationally things happen on a much slower level. But I'm so with you. I'm going to have to pull us up, unfortunately, because I've got another session coming on with Uncle Paul Callahan there and Francesca from the ANTAC, the Nunkery Association. Guys, is there any last things you want to leave us with? You know, thoughts, passion points, doubtful points, anything you want to kind of just say to sum up our session and how you're feeling or what you want to do moving from here?
I'll have a quick say. I mean, look, just want to thank you fellas for organising this and being able to have a yarn and getting to meet, you know, like Damien and other young fellow there. But, you know, like, it is about us celebrating what we do well. I think that's really important, or else, as I said, we're not going to know what's been done around the countryside. And I really do think it is about having that strength-based approach, us keep talking and connecting and being able to move forward that way, you know, because and we get as many fellas as we can on board and keep talking, you know, and it can't be just one in one area either. We need 3 or 4 of those fellas in case that one fella can't make it. So we need to be doing that. And I think we're on the right track though. And I think, you know, there's so much good work going on that it's not funny. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess just to echo that as well, it's and thank you as well. I think these forums allow us to really connect and co-regulate as well, and to talk about some of the stuff, because at times you feel isolated within your own communities and you're not sure what's happening across. It was great to connect in the awards night on Zoom and looking at all the great stuff that everyone's doing, and then you can understand, like, you're not in this by yourself. There is a lot of people across Australia that are doing the same, that are wanting to achieve the same vision, and just having that forum to connect is great.
Yeah, well good.
Thank you both so much. I like literally have a full page of stuff that's come from this conversation. I think all the conversations have been great, but this has like really been a phenomenal conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing to connect with you guys massively. If you don't mind me hounding you a little bit.
Great.
No, we love that.
Oh, perfect. Let's keep it going. Thank you so much.